Hello, Mr. Ahmad and friends. Today's vlog that I will bring about them about metrosexual. So, metrosexual is a portmanteau of metropolitan and heterosexual, coined in 1994, describing a man, especially one living in an urban, post-industrial capitalist culture, who is especially meticulous about his grooming and appearance, typically spending a significant amount of time and money on shopping as part of this. While the term suggests that a metrosexual is heterosexual, it can also refer to gay or bisexual men. The term metrosexual originated in an article by Mark Simpson published on November 15, 1994 in The Independent. Simpson wrote, "Metrosexual meant the single young man with a high disposable income living or working in the city because that's where all the best shops are. Is perhaps the most promising consumer market of the decade. In the 80s, he was only to be found inside fashion magazines such as GQ. In the 19th, he's everywhere and he's going shopping. However, it was not until the early 2000s centuries when Simpson returned to the subject that the term became globally popular. In 2002, Salon.com published an article by Simpson, which described David Beckham as the biggest metrosexual in Britain and offered this updated definition. The typical metrosexual is a young man with money to spend living in or within easy reach or of a metropolis because that's where all the best shops, clubs, gyms, and hairdressers are. He might be officially gay, straight, or bisexual, but this is utterly immaterial because he has clearly taken himself as his own love object and pleasure as his sexual preference. The advertising agency EuroSGC worldwide adopted the term shortly thereafter for a marketing study. Citation needed. Sydney's daily newspaper, the Sydney Morning Herald, ran a major feature in March 2003 titled "The Rise of the Metrosexual," also syndicated in its sister paper, The Age. Citation needed. A couple of months later, the New York Times Sunday Style section ran a story, "Metrosexuals Come Out." The term and its connotations continue to roll steadily in more news outlets around the world. Thus, it did represent a complex and gradual change in the shopping and self-presentation habits of both men and women. The idea of metrosexuality was often distilled in the media down to a few men and a short checklist of vanities like skincare products, scented candles, and costly, colorful dress shirts and pricey designer jeans. It was this image of the metrosexual, that of a straight young man who got pedicures and facials, practice, practice aromatherapy, and spent freely on clothes, that contribute to backlash against the term for men who merely wanted to feel free to take more care with their appearance than had been the norm in the 19th century, when companies abandoned dress codes. Dockers Hackies became a popular brand, and XL or extra large became the one size that fit all. Uh, a 60-minute story on 1960, a 1960 minutes story on 1960 century to 1970 centuries. Pro footballer John Nemeth suggested he was perhaps America's first metrosexual after filming his most famous and sporting beauty Miss Pentos. When the word first became popular, various sources attribute its origin to transporter Marian Salzam, but Salzman has credited Simpson as the original source for her usage of the work. Over the course of the following years, other terms countering or substituting for metrosexual appear. Perhaps the most widely used was retrosexual, which in its anti or pre-metrosexual sense was also first used by Simpson. However, in later years, the term was used by some to describe men who subscribed to what they affected to be the grooming and dress standards of a previous era, such as the handsome, impeccably turned-out fictional character of Donald Draper in the television series Mad Men itself, set in an idealized version of the early 1960th century New York advertising world. Another example was the short-lived Ubersexual, which was coined by marketing executive and author of The Future of Men, and was perhaps inspired by Simpson's use of the term ubermetrosexual to describe David Beckham. Simpson's original definition of the metrosexual was sexually ambiguous, or at least went beyond the straight or gay dichotomy. Marketers, in contrast, insisted that the metrosexual was always straight. They even tried to pretend that he was not vain. However, they failed to convince the public. Hence, say Simpsons, their attempt to create the uber-straight ubersexual. Narcissism, according to Simpson, plays a crucial role in the metrosexual concept. In the book Male Impersonators, he explains why understanding narcissism is vital to understanding modern masculinity. He cites Freud's on narcissism, which analyzes the psychological aspect of narcissism and explains narcissistic love as follows. A person may love according to the narcissistic type what he is himself, what he once was, what he would like to be, someone who once was part of himself. Sigmund Freud, the major works of Sigmund Freud. In 2002, this idea was further explored in the book Media Sports Stars, Masculinities and Moralities Routledge, when Gary Warnell described Beckham's narcissistic self-obsession, seeing it as a break from the prevailing masculine codes. Female metrosexuality is a concept that Simpson explored with American writer Caroline Haygood. They employed the female characters from the HBO series Sex and the City in order to illustrate examples of metrosexuality, a term Haygood coined to refer to the feminine form of metrosexuality. The piece implied that although this phenomenon would not necessarily empower women, the fact that the metrosexual lifestyle de-emphasized traditional male and female gender roles could help women out in the long run. However, it is debatable whether the characters made famous by Sex and the City truly de-emphasized female gender roles, given that the series focused a high amount of attention on stereotypically feminine interests like clothing, appearance, and romantic entanglements. Traditional masculine norms, as described in Psychology's Ronald F. Levins' masculinity reconstructed, are avoidance of femininity, restricted emotions, sex disconnected from intimacy, pursuit of achievement and status, self-reliance, strength, aggression, and homophobia. Various studies, including market research by Euro RSCG, have suggested that the pursuit of achievement and status is not as important to men as it used to be, and neither is, to a degree, the restriction of emotions of the disconnections of sex from intimacy. Another norm change supported by research is that men no longer find sexual freedom universally enthralling. Lillian L. Alzheimer notes less avoidance of femininity and the emergence of a segment of men who have embraced custom and attitude once deemed the province of women. Men's fashion magazines such as Details, Men Vogue, and The Devil's Cargo targeted what one Details editor called men who musters and read a lot of magazines. Change in culture and attitudes toward masculinity visible in the media through television shows such as Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, Queer as Folk, and Will and Grace have changed these traditional masculine norms. Metrosexuals only made their appearance after cultural change in the environment and change in views of masculinity. Citizenity. Simpson said in his article Metrosexual that rings a bell that gay men provided the early prototype for metrosexuality, decidedly single, definitely urban, dreadfully uncertain of their identity, hence the emphasis on pride and the susceptibility to the latest label. And socially emasculated gay men pioneered the business of accessoring and combining masculinity and desirability. But such probing analysis into various shoppers' pieces may have ignored other significant factors affecting men's shopping habits, foremost among them women's shopping habits, as the retail analyst Marshall Cohen explained in a 2005 article in the New York Times entitled Gay or Straight? Hard to tell. The fact that women buy less of men's clothing than they used to has, more than any other factor, propelled men into stores to shop for themselves. In 1985, only 25% of all men's apparel was bought by men. He said 75% was bought by women for men. By 1998, men were buying 52% of apparel. In 2004, that number grew to 69% and shows no sign of slowing. One result of this shift was the revelation that men cared more about how they look than the women shopping for them had. However, despite change in masculinity, research has suggested men still feel social pressure to endorse traditional masculine male models in advertising. Martin and Knott, 2009, found that feminine men preferred feminine models in private, but state a preference for the traditional masculine models when their collective self was silent. In other words, feminine men endorsed traditional masculine models when they were concerned about being classified by other men as feminine. Then the author suggested this result reflected to the social pressure on men to endorse traditional masculine norms. In a soundbite diffusion through the channels of marketers and popular media who eagerly and constantly reminded their audience that the metrosexual has formulated into something more digestible for consumers, a heterosexual male who is in touch with his feminine side. He color coordinates, cares deeply about exfoliation, and has perhaps manscaped. Men did not go to shopping malls, so consumer culture promotes the idea of a sensitive man who went to malls, bought magazines, and spent freely to improve his personal appearance, as Simpson put it. For some time now, a fashion reproductive, repressed, unmasterized heterosexuality has been given the pink slip by consumer capitalism. The stoic, self-denying, modest straight male didn't shop enough. His role was to earn money for his wife to spend, and so he had to be replaced by a new kind of man, one less certain of his identity and much more interested in his image. That's to say, one who was much more interested in being looked at, because that's the only way you can be certain you actually exist. A man, in other words, who is an advertiser's walking wet dream. More Simpson, Salon.com. In contrast, there is also the view that metrosexuality is at least partly naturally occurring phenomenon. much like the aesthetic movement of the 19th century, and that's the metrosexual is a modern incarnation of a dandy. Fashion designer Tom Ford drew parallels when he described David Beckham as a total modern dandy for suggestion that macho sporting role models who also care about fashion and appearance influence masculine norms in wider society. In its most popular Pokemon in real-life series, the main antagonist is a character called the metrosexual hipster portrayed by Len Hickox. So, it's over for video today. Sorry if there's a wrong word. Thank you and goodbye.